The rain fell hard that morning. I remember it clearly because I had just come back from my morning jog, soaked and cold, when I saw the envelope sitting on the kitchen table. My mom must have brought it in from the mailbox and left it there. The envelope was plain white and slightly wet at the corners. There was no return address, only my name, written in neat handwriting, Liam Carter. Something about the way my name looked on that paper gave me a strange feeling. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but it felt familiar somehow, like a voice I hadn't heard in a long time. My fingers trembled a little as I picked it up. I looked at Mom, who was busy boiling water for tea. She hadn't even noticed I was staring at it. I opened it slowly. There were only 2 sentences inside. Liam, I know I have no right to ask, but if you can find it in your heart, please come see me before it's too late. At the bottom, a name, Ethan Carter. My heart stopped. I hadn't heard that name in 20 years. My father, the man who walked out before I even turned 2, the man who left my mother alone to raise me, the man who never sent a card, never made a call, never gave a single explanation. I stared at the name for a long time, unsure how to feel. The address was from a hospice center in Maine, over 400 miles away. He was dying, that much was clear. But why now? Why reach out after all these years? I stood there, still dripping rainwater on the floor, when Mom turned around and saw the envelope in my hands. She froze. Where did you get that? She asked, her voice quiet but sharp. It was on the table, I replied. You didn't see it? She looked at me for a long moment, then slowly sat down at the kitchen counter. Her eyes were already glassy, like she knew what the letter said. He's dying, I said. She nodded once, her lips tight. And he wants to see me. Another nod. Silence filled the room like thick fog. You knew he sent it? Her voice came out soft. He called the center last week and asked if they could send it. I didn't think he would actually write. I didn't want to tell you until I knew for sure. I stared at her. Why didn't you tell me? Don't you think I deserve to decide for myself? She looked away. I didn't want him hurting. You again, Liam. I couldn't blame her. Not really. She had done everything for me. Worked 2 jobs, helped with school, cheered at every soccer game. She never once said a bad word about him, but she never spoke kindly either. Just silence. Cold, hard silence. And I had filled that silence with my own story that he was a coward. A selfish man who didn't care, but now he was reaching out. And dying. What should I do? I asked, almost without meaning to. She shook her head. That's not my choice. I looked down at the letter again. I didn't owe him anything. He had never been there. I had grown up without him, learned to shave without him, learned to fight my own battles, got through college on my own. He didn't deserve my time, but still, something tugged at my chest. Something I didn't want to admit. Curiosity? Anger? Closure? I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I packed a bag, got in my old car, and drove. I didn't tell anyone, not even my best friend or my boss. I just took a week off, told my mom I needed to do this, and left. As the miles passed, I tried to imagine what he would look like now. I had no memory of him, only one photo, hidden deep in a drawer, of a tall man with short brown hair holding me as a baby. I used to stare at it sometimes and wonder if he thought of me. Now, I would finally see him. The hospice center was small, quiet, and smelled like clean sheets and medicine. A nurse at the front desk looked up as I walked in. Can I help you? I'm here to see Ethan Carter. She checked the list. Are you family? I nodded. His son. Her face softened a little. He's been asking about you every day since he sent the letter. Room 14. Down the hall to the left. I took a deep breath and walked. Each step felt heavier than the last. My hands were sweaty. My heart was pounding. Part of me still wanted to turn back, but I kept going. When I reached the door, I paused. What do you say to a man who disappeared from your life? I knocked gently and pushed the door open. There he was, a thin man with sunken cheeks, lying on a bed by the window. Tubes in his nose. His hands were frail, shaking slightly. His hair was mostly gray now, but I could still see the shape of his face, the same as mine. He opened his eyes slowly. When he saw me, his lips trembled. Liam, his voice was weak, like it had been trapped in his throat for years. I stood by the door, frozen. He reached out a shaking hand. You came. I didn't move. I almost didn't, I said. He nodded, like he expected that. I wouldn't blame you, he whispered. You have every reason to hate me. I didn't answer. I didn't know what to say. There was a long silence. Only the soft beep of the machines filled the room. Finally, I stepped closer and sat down in the chair beside him. I just want to know why, I said. He looked at me for a long time. His eyes were full of pain, not just physical, but something deeper. I'll tell you, he said quietly. But it's not a story I'm proud of. I didn't expect it to be. I made mistakes, Liam. Terrible ones. I thought leaving was the right thing, but I was wrong. I see that now. I clenched my fists. You thought leaving your son was the right thing? He closed his eyes. At the time, yes. I was trying to protect you, but I should have stayed. I should have fought harder. I should have been your father. I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask where he had been during every birthday, every graduation, every Christmas. But I stayed quiet. Something in his voice stopped me. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I just wanted to see you once before I go. To look at the man you've become. His eyes filled with tears. You look just like me. But better, stronger. I swallowed hard. He reached under the blanket and pulled out a small, crumpled photo. The same one I had at home. I've kept this with me every day, he said. Even when I had nothing. Even when I was drinking too much. When I was running. When I was too ashamed to write. You were drinking? He nodded. I was a mess. That's why I left. I didn't want you growing up with a drunk for a father. I thought your mom would be better off without me. I thought you would hate me less if I disappeared. I looked away. My throat burned. You were wrong, I said. I hated you more. He nodded slowly, accepting it like a sentence he already knew. I know. We sat there in silence again. The light from the window fell across his face, making him look even older than he was. I don't know why I came, I whispered. Maybe I just wanted to see what kind of man you were. He smiled sadly. And what do you see? I looked at him, really looked. I see someone who ran, I said. But I also see someone who regrets it. He looked down, tears falling freely now. I do, Liam. Every single day. My chest ached. I didn't forgive him, not yet. But for the first time in my life, I saw my father, not as a shadow, not as a villain, but as a man, broken, flawed, dying, but still, my father, and that changed something inside me. The next morning, I came back to the hospice center with a bag of clean clothes and a coffee I wasn't sure he'd drink. I didn't tell anyone I had stayed overnight in a cheap motel down the road. I hadn't planned to stay more than a few hours, but something inside me told me not to leave just yet. I wasn't ready. When I walked into room 14 again, he was awake. This time, he smiled. Morning, he said. His voice was still weak but steadier than the day before. I brought you something, I said, holding up the coffee. He laughed, then coughed a little. Black, no sugar? I paused. How did you know? You're my son, he said. Some things just carry over. I handed him the cup, and he held it with both hands, slowly bringing it to his lips. Still hot, he said. You just got here, yeah. I stayed nearby. He looked at me closely, eyes warm. You came back. I sat in the chair by his bed again. I have questions, he nodded. Ask anything. I took a breath. Where did you go after you left us? His eyes grew distant, as if the past were a movie only he could see. I left town. First to Boston. Then I drifted. Why? I told myself I was saving you and your mother from me, he said. I had problems. Drinking, anger, regret. I couldn't keep a job. I was scared I'd hurt you not physically, but by being a bad example. I didn't speak. He continued. Your mom begged me to get help. I tried. I really did, but I always fell back. Every time I held you as a baby, I wondered if you'd be better off without me. You could have tried harder, I said sharply. You could have written, called, I know. I was a coward. I convinced myself that disappearing was love. It wasn't. The room fell silent. You know, he said after a pause, I used to sit outside your school when you were little. I turned to him, confused. What? I lived in the same city for a while. When you were around 8, I didn't dare go near you. But once or twice a year, I'd drive by your school and just watch. Make sure you were okay. I stared at him, heart racing. I saw you playing soccer once, he said, smiling gently. You were fast, just like I was when I was your age. You saw me, I repeated quietly, almost not believing it. I never stopped caring, Liam. I just didn't think I deserved to be in your life. I swallowed hard, but I missed everything, he said, his voice cracking. Your first words, your birthdays, your graduation. I saw the photos online. I searched your name sometimes. When I got enough courage, you had the internet, but not the courage to say hello? I asked, a mixture of anger and sadness in my voice. He nodded. Exactly. My fists tightened in my lap. I didn't know what emotion was stronger, grief for what I lost, or fury for what he gave up. I hated you, I said softly. For so long. I know, he whispered. I told myself you were a monster. I built a wall around that part of me. And then you wrote one stupid letter, and the wall cracked. He finished for me. I sighed deeply. I still don't know why I'm here. Maybe part of you wanted to know me. Just once, I didn't respond. A nurse came in to check on him. She gave him some pills and smiled kindly at me, like she knew I was someone important. Then she left. I don't have much time, he said when the door closed. The cancer's in my lungs. They said weeks, maybe less. I looked at the tubes in his arms. He looked tired already. Then talk, I said. Tell me more. He smiled faintly. Okay, and he did. He told me about his childhood, how his own father had been violent, how he had sworn never to become like him, but slowly did. He told me about the years after he left us, working odd jobs, drinking too much, sleeping in shelters sometimes, always running from the guilt. He told me about the moment he hit rock bottom. It was Christmas Eve, he said. About 10 years ago. I was outside a diner, cold, broke, and hungry. I saw a little boy inside, laughing with his dad. They were sharing a milkshake. And I thought, that should have been me and Liam. I broke down right there on the sidewalk. Tears filled his eyes again. That night, I checked into a free rehab center. Stayed there for months. Got clean. But by then, it felt too late. It's never too late, I said quietly. The words surprised me. He looked at me, hopeful. Do you mean that? I mean, I don't know. I'm angry, but I'm also here. That's more than I deserve. We sat in silence for a while, both of us trying to breathe through the weight between us. Then he reached for the small drawer beside his bed. I want to give you something, he said. He pulled out a leather notebook, old, worn, and full of creases. I started writing letters to you every year on your birthday. I never mailed them, but I kept them. I didn't want to forget who I was supposed to be. He handed it to me. I held it carefully, like it was something sacred. Read them when you're ready, he said. Or not at all. I want you to have them. I nodded slowly. I'm sorry, Liam, he said again, almost a whisper. Not just for leaving, but for not coming back. I didn't say, I forgive you. I wasn't ready, but I didn't walk away either. That night, I sat in my motel room with a notebook on my lap. I opened it slowly. The first letter was dated the year I turned 3. Dear Liam, today is your birthday. You won't remember me, but I remember you. I read until the words blurred with tears. Every letter was filled with longing, regret, love, and missed moments. He wrote about the weather on my birthday, about songs he thought I'd like, about dreams he had of walking me to school or teaching me how to ride a bike. He wasn't the man I had imagined all these years. he was worse. And better, he was broken, weak, but not evil, and something inside me began to shift. The next day, I returned to his room. He looked worse, paler, slower. I didn't think you'd come back again, he said, barely able to smile. I read them, I said, placing the notebook gently on his lap. He looked at it, then at me. I cried. He nodded. That's okay, he whispered. I cried writing them. I took a deep breath. I don't forgive you yet, but I don't hate you anymore. His lip trembled. He turned his face to the window to hide the tears. I just wanted to know you, I said, even if it's only for a few days. He looked at me. Then let's use them well, and we did. That afternoon, we talked about my life. I told him about college, my job as a junior architect, the car I rebuilt in my garage. He listened like every word mattered. He asked about Mom. She never married again, I said. She never talked about you. She deserved better, he said. She gave me everything, he nodded. I always knew she would. He showed me old photos, some I had never seen. He told me stories of his youth, his dreams before he messed everything up. I told him about mine, and when the nurse came to check on him again, she smiled at us. You two look like father and son, she said. He chuckled. We are, even if we lost time. That evening, as I left, he said something that stayed with me. Liam, he said, I may not live to make things right, but I hope you'll live without the weight of what I did. I looked back at him, lying in that narrow bed, so small and frail now. I don't know how to do that, I said. You'll learn. Just don't carry my sins as your own. I didn't know what to answer, but I nodded anyway, because maybe that was a start. The sun came up slow the next day. I didn't sleep well again. I kept thinking about everything he said, everything he gave me. His notebook, his words, his pain, his presence. For the first time in my life, I had something I thought I'd never have, a father's voice, and now I knew that voice was going to vanish soon. I walked back to the hospice center with a heavy heart and tired eyes. Room 14 felt different now. Not just a place for dying, but a space where life was being remembered, piece by piece. He was sitting up when I entered. The nurse had raised the bed for him. You're early, he said, smiling weakly. You sound surprised. I thought you'd need space. I do. But I also feel like we're running out of time. He nodded slowly. We are. I sat beside him again, and for a few minutes, neither of us said anything. The silence wasn't cold this time. It felt full, like we were both breathing the same memories. I talked to Mom last night, I said. He turned his head, eyes alert. She asked if I was okay. I didn't tell her much, just that I found some answers. And is she okay? She sounded sad. She's always been strong, he said. But I know I broke her heart. You did, I said. He didn't argue. She once told me, I continued, that love is not about staying when it's easy, but when it's hard. He gave a faint smile. She always had a way with words. She never bad-mouthed you. Not once. But the silence said enough. He looked down at his hands, which now shook slightly without control. I used to imagine you asking about me. I'd hope she'd say something good. She didn't say anything at all. He closed his eyes for a moment. I deserved that. Then he looked at me again, serious this time. Can I ask you something? He said, yeah. Are you happy? I thought about that. I don't know. I'm doing okay. I have a good job. I've got friends. I laugh sometimes, but some things always felt unfinished, like a room in the house I never opened. He gave a knowing nod. That room was me, maybe. He placed his thin hand over his heart. I want you to finish the story without me in it, but with truth, not hate, not a hole, just truth. I looked at him closely. You're afraid of being forgotten, I said. He nodded. Aren't we all? There was a knock at the door. A nurse peeked in and handed me a small package. Delivery for Ethan Carter, she said. I opened it. Inside was a wrapped canvas frame, a painting. He smiled when he saw it. I forgot I ordered that. I unwrapped it and stared. It was a painting of a tree on a hill under a pale blue sky. Just a single tree with strong roots and soft leaves. Standing alone, it's beautiful, I said. I used to paint, he whispered. Before things got bad, I didn't know that. There's a lot you don't know. He paused, then said, that tree. It reminds me of you. Strong, still standing, even after the storm. I didn't know what to say. My throat tightened. I want you to keep it, he said. I nodded. As I leaned the painting against the wall, I noticed a small label on the back. A note written in his handwriting to my son. May your roots grow deep and your branches reach far. I had to sit down. Why now? I asked. Why send the letter after all these years? He took a breath. Because dying makes you brave. I was scared for too long. But when the doctor told me I had months, something changed. I knew I couldn't leave this world without trying, even if it was too late. Do you wish you had come back sooner? Every day, but you didn't. I thought you'd slam the door in my face. I might have. He smiled gently. But you didn't. No, I said. I didn't. There was a long pause. Liam, he said. There's something else I need to tell you. What? He looked nervous. His eyes started to the window and back to me. There's a will. It's not much. I don't own anything big, but I left you what I could. The notebook, some letters, a few personal things, and a letter to your mom. I stared at him. She deserves one, he said. She always did. I'll give it to her. Thank you. Then he reached under his pillow and pulled out a small wooden box. This is for you, he said. I opened it slowly. Inside were a few old items. A ring, a small photo of him and my mom when they were young, and a folded note. Read it later, he said. When you're ready. I nodded and put it carefully in my bag. That afternoon, something shifted. His breathing grew slower. He began to doze off more often. The nurse came in and said he needed more rest. I'll be back tomorrow, I said as I stood up. He grabbed my hand gently. I'm proud of you, he whispered. My heart ached. You don't even know me, I said. I know enough. I held his hand for a while before letting go. That night, I sat in the motel parking lot staring at the stars. I opened the small note from the box. It read, Liam, if you're reading this, it means you gave me a chance. Thank you. I hope you find peace where I caused pain. I'll never stop being sorry, but I'll always be your dad. Ethan, tears spilled down my face. I didn't know how to feel. Sadness, relief, anger, love. They all mixed together like a storm. The next day, when I returned to room 14, I knew before I even opened the door. The nurse met me in the hallway. I'm sorry, she said. He passed early this morning. I stood still. He was peaceful, she added. He asked for you before he closed his eyes. My knees felt weak, my chest heavy. I walked into the room. It was quiet. The bed was neatly made. His painting still leaned against the wall. The air felt different, emptier, but something of him remained. A letter was left on the chair. My name on the front. I picked it up, sat down, and opened it with shaking hands. Dear Liam, the last time I saw you was the first time I felt like I could breathe again. Thank you for your mercy. Thank you for your time. I hope when you tell my story one day, you tell it honestly, not with hate, not with praise, but with truth. That's all I ask. Live well. Love bravely. Your father, Ethan. I held the letter against my chest. That was the last time I saw my father, and it was enough. It took me a while to leave the room. Even after the nurse left me alone, I sat there, holding his last letter in my hands, staring at the walls like he might walk back in. The air was too still, like the room itself was waiting for me to say goodbye. But how do you say goodbye to someone you just met? Someone who was supposed to be part of your whole life, but was only there at the very end. I finally stood up and looked around the room one last time. His toothbrush was still on the nightstand. A half-finished cup of water sat beside it. The notebook, the small box, and the painting he gave me were all I had left. I gathered them gently, like they were pieces of something sacred. As I stepped out into the hallway, the nurse gave me a kind look. I'm so sorry for your loss, she said. Thank you. He talked about you every day after you arrived, she added. It gave him peace. I didn't know what to say to that. Peace was not something I had yet, but maybe he did. I drove back home in silence. No music, no podcasts, just the soft hum of the road and the rhythm of my thoughts. It felt like the world should have stopped for a minute just to honor him, but it didn't. Cars still passed. People still smiled at gas stations. Life kept going. When I got home, Mom was waiting at the door. She looked at me the same way she had when I broke my arm in 5th grade, like she knew I was in pain but couldn't fix it. I stood in front of her for a few seconds, then I said, "He's gone." She reached out and pulled me into a hug. I didn't cry, but I felt something heavy lift, just for a moment. "I'm sorry, Liam," she whispered. I saw a different side of him. I said quietly, "I'm glad," she replied, surprising me. We sat at the kitchen table later that evening, the same table where I first opened his letter. I handed her the envelope he had written for her. She looked at it for a long time before she finally took it with shaking hands. "Do you want me to leave?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, stay." She opened it slowly and began to read. Her eyes moved across the page with care. Her lips parted slightly, and when she finished, she placed it on the table, closed her eyes, and let out a deep breath. "What did he say?" I asked gently. She smiled softly, eyes still wet. "He said he was sorry, not just for leaving, but for giving up on himself. He said I was stronger than he ever was, and that he should have told me that sooner." She didn't say much more, but later that night, I saw her standing alone in the hallway, staring at the photo of them from years ago. Her fingers brushed the edge of the frame, and though she didn't speak, I could feel her letting go of something heavy. The next few days were quiet, but inside me, something kept pulling at my chest. I needed to do something. I didn't know what but something, so I opened the notebook again. I started reading the letters from the beginning, carefully, slowly, not just with my eyes, but with my heart. Some were short, some were long, some were messy, written during hard years. Others were full of hope. He told me about his life, his regrets, his favorite songs, his dreams, the books he hoped I would one day read. There was one letter, though, that caught me off guard. It was written on my 18th birthday. "Dear Liam, if you're anything like I imagine, today you're strong and smart and probably way taller than I ever was. I imagine you have your mother's heart, her courage, and maybe my stubbornness. I wish I could stand beside you today. I wish I could shake your hand, look you in the eye, and say, 'You made it,' but I'm not there. And I'm sorry. There's one thing I want you to know more than anything else: your life matters. Not because of me, not in spite of me, but because you are your own person. You are more than my absence. Live like that. Your dad." I closed the notebook, held it to my chest, and cried, not just for what was lost but for what had been found. Even at the end, the next morning, I made a decision. I drove back to the hill just outside of town, the same one where my friends and I used to go as teenagers, where the view stretched for miles and the wind always seemed to whisper secrets. I carried the tree painting with me. I planted it on the hill, right into the earth, like a flag. I didn't bury it. I didn't hang it. I just left it there, leaning against the old oak tree. Then I sat beside it and spoke out loud. "I don't know if you can hear me, Dad, but I came. I saw you, and I'm going to remember you, not as the man who left, but as the one who came back." I sat there for hours, and when I left, the wind felt different. A week later, I got a call from the hospice center. "We have some of your father's belongings," the woman said. "Would you like to come pick them up?" "Yes," I said. "I'll be there tomorrow." When I arrived, they handed me a small cardboard box. Inside were simple things: an old wallet with no money but 2 photos inside, one of me as a toddler and one of him and Mom when they were young, a copy of The Old Man and the Sea, a keychain shaped like a tree, and a folded list titled, Things I Want to Tell My Son Someday. The list had 10 items. You don't have to be perfect to be loved. Anger feels powerful, but forgiveness feels free. Your mother is the strongest person I know. Love someone who makes you laugh in the quiet moments. Life will try to make you bitter. Don't let it. There is no shame in starting over. Never measure your worth by your worst day. It's okay to cry. Real men cry. Don't wait too long to say, I love you. I always loved you even when I was gone. I read it again, and I knew this was my inheritance, not money, not land, but something better, truth, regret, love, and the start of healing. That night, I began to write my own letter, not to him, but to myself, to the boy who had grown up wondering why his father disappeared. Dear Liam, I began, he didn't stay, but he came back, and you gave him a chance. That was brave. That was enough. A year passed, not fast, not slow, just one day at a time. At first, the grief came in waves, loud and sharp. I'd be fine walking through the grocery store, then I'd see a father playing with his son, and I'd have to turn down another aisle just to breathe. Other times, I'd wake up with his voice in my head, soft, fading, and I'd reach for the notebook like it was a life jacket. I read the letters over and over, each one a reminder that even though we had so little time, we had enough to change something real. I didn't tell many people about him at first. Just my closest friend, Marcus. You serious? He asked, eyes wide, when I told him everything. Your dad came back right before he died? Yeah, I said. He reached out. I drove up to see him, stayed with him for 3 days. Man, Marcus shook his head. What was it like? I thought for a moment. It was like walking into a fire, but then realizing it wasn't burning me, it was warming something I didn't know was frozen. He didn't laugh. He didn't joke. He just nodded and said, That's deep, bro. Later that night, I took the small wooden box and placed it on a shelf above my desk. I kept the painting nearby to the tree on the hill, his handwriting still on the back. To my son, May, your roots grow deep and your branches reach far. Sometimes I'd catch myself staring at it during late nights when work stressed me out or when the silence in my apartment got too loud. And every time, I'd feel steadier, like I had someone behind me. Even now, my mom changed too. She didn't talk about him much, but she no longer avoided his name. One day, while we were cleaning out the garage, she found an old box of photos. Most of them were from when she and my dad were in their early 20s. Wow, I said, holding up a picture of them sitting on the hood of an old blue car. You guys look like movie stars. She smiled a little. We were happy once. Do you regret it? I asked. Regret what? Loving him. She took the photo from me and looked at it closely. No, she said. I regret that he couldn't stay, but I don't regret loving him. Because he gave me you. I didn't know what to say, but I hugged her tightly. That weekend, I did something unexpected. I drove back to Maine, not to the hospice center. It had already changed. Names, new staff, new signs. I went back to the cemetery. I stood in front of his grave. There was no fancy stone, just a small plaque. Like many others, Ethan Carter 1968-02 for father. Dreamer, late but not forgotten. I had chosen those words. At first, I wasn't sure about father. He hadn't really raised me. But by the end, he showed me what it meant to try. And sometimes trying, even too late, means something. I sat on the grass and pulled out a new notebook. My own, blank pages waiting to be filled. I started writing, Dear Dad, you miss so much. But you also gave me something no one else could, the chance to see you not as the man I imagined, but as the man you really were, broken, honest, trying. You weren't perfect, not even close, but you came back, and that changed everything. I closed the notebook and rested my hand on the plaque. I forgive you, I whispered, and I meant it, not because he earned it, but because I didn't want to carry the weight anymore. On the way home, I stopped by the hill just outside of town, the one where I had left the painting. To my surprise, it was still there, a little weathered from rain, the colors softer now. But it was there. A few wildflowers had grown around it. I sat beneath the big oak tree and leaned back against the trunk, the same tree that had stood tall in his painting, and I thought, this is how I want to remember him, not just as the man who left, but as the man who painted trees, wrote birthday letters, and told his son to forgive, even if it took time. That fall, I signed up to volunteer at a local youth center. I started teaching art classes on weekends. The first week, a boy asked, "Why do you paint so many trees?" I smiled. "Because trees are strong," I said. "They survive storms. And sometimes, even when they lose all their leaves, they still grow again." He nodded like he understood, and I realized I wasn't just healing myself, I was planting something new. I started writing more, not just letters to Dad, but stories, short poems, thoughts I never spoke aloud. I didn't know what I'd do with them, but it felt good to get them out. One evening, I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting my tie, before heading to a small community event where I was giving a short talk. The topic? How we carry the past, and how to let it go. I had written it from my heart. As I looked at myself, I saw his eyes, my dad's, and for once, it didn't hurt. It felt full. I stepped up to the microphone later that evening. There were only about 20 people in the room, but my hands still shook a little. "I used to think that family was just who raised you," I began. "But sometimes family is also who returns, even when it's almost too late. Sometimes closure doesn't come in perfect packages. Sometimes it comes in the form of a letter, a painting, or a voice you never thought you'd hear again." I looked up. My father left when I was young. I thought I'd never see him again. But near the end of his life, he reached out. I visited. We talked. And even though he was dying, something inside both of us started to live again. I didn't forgive him right away. I still haven't forgotten the pain. But I saw the truth. And the truth set me free. I paused. "I tell you this not because I want sympathy, but because I want you to know that even broken things can be beautiful. Even lost time can give you something if you let it. And sometimes, just sometimes, we get the chance to say goodbye the right way." I stepped down to soft applause. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Afterward, a woman came up to me and said, "Your story reminded me of my own father. Thank you for being brave enough to share it." I smiled. Brave? I never saw myself that way before. But maybe I was. These days, I still think about him, not every day, but on the important ones. My birthday, his, Father's Day. Sometimes I find myself saying things he said, or humming songs he once mentioned. It sneaks up on me. A memory, a phrase, a shadow that doesn't feel heavy anymore. I carry him with me now, not like a burden, but like a quiet companion. The last time I saw my father, he was lying in a bed, thin and fading, but in my mind, I remember him sitting under a tree, paintbrush in hand, saying, "That tree reminds me of you," and maybe, just maybe, I remind myself of him too. Only this time, I know what to do with the love I still have left.